Kevin Holland is taking fighting seriously, and it's working.
All smiles for the crime-fighting, trash-talking, bright-shining Kevin Holland.
Kevin 12 Wednesday Holland!
Every win in the welterweight division I want everybody from 15 to 1. I want every dub. Every win's important to me.
The power that he possessed at 185 pounds, 100% carry over to 170. I'm very, very high on this young man at 170 pounds.
Since 2020, when Daniel Rodriguez entered the UFC, he was put immediately on the map. This is a tough out at 170 pounds.
More underrated welterweights on this UFC roster. This is a man who came from nothing. He's a fighter.
He does that job over the law. He was in prison. This is allowing him to turn his life around.
Rodriguez!
I'm gonna knock him out. It's my night.
Kevin Holland vs Daniel Rodriguez are set for the main card of UFC 318. And although Holland has had some failures in his past when moving up to 185, when you talk about his career at 170, he's had a lot of success, and I think he has a chance to be a real contender at 170 pounds. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicyMMA. I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. Also be sure to hit that join button for exclusive channel perks. But anyways, let's get into it. When you talk about the career of Kevin Holland, it's almost as if he has two separate careers. He has his career at 185 pounds and he has his career at 170 pounds. When Holland fights at 185 pounds, of course he does have some victories under his belt, but for the most part, his career at 185 is defined by his inability to stop wrestlers. But when you look at Kevin Holland's career at 170, it's a very different career. At 170, Holland not only has the ability to stop wrestlers, but he also utilizes his skill and also utilizes his qualities very effectively at that weight class. And based upon that, we've seen a lot of success from Holland at 170 pounds. So a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why has Kevin Holland been so much more successful at 170 as compared to 185? Well, in my opinion, it comes down to a bunch of different factors, but the first and main factor that I sort of touched upon before is Holland's ability to stop wrestlers at 170. At that weight class, Holland has a great ability to stop takedowns and essentially keep the fight on the feet, which is exactly where he wants it. But even if he does get taken down at welterweight, Holland also has a really good ability to utilize his submission game, and over the years he's gotten a bunch of submissions on wrestlers. But when you talk about Holland's career at 185, he just has an inability to stop takedowns. He would get taken down in round 1 and he would essentially get held down for all 3 rounds and lose easy decisions. But outside of his great ability to stop takedowns at welterweight, I think another reason for why Holland is so much better at 170 pounds is due to his intangibles. At 170, Holland has a lot more power, his length is much more of an advantage for him at that weight class, and even his chin is more effective at 170 as compared to 185. So I think overall, Holland just has a much better skill set and a much better build for 170 as compared to 185. And I think that's why we've seen so much more success for him at the welterweight division. But another question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I think Kevin Holland is taking his career more seriously, and why do I think he can be a legitimate contender at the welterweight division? Well, obviously Kevin Holland has been training throughout his entire UFC career, but what I mean by when I say I didn't think Kevin Holland was taking fighting seriously, at least early on, is when Holland used to go into fights, he didn't have a game plan whatsoever, and he also wasn't making improvements. If Holland was able to land a big right hand and get a big finish early, great, he would be able to do so and he would get a victory. But if his opponents had a great game plan to go up against Kevin Holland, Holland would never make mid-fight adjustments, and he would never game plan going into any of his fights either. He would fight everybody the exact same way, and I think that's why early on we would see Kevin struggle with some of the better fighters at 185 as well as 170. But although it is a small sample size, and although the level of competition isn't necessarily the highest, I think in Kevin Holland's last 2 fights against Vicente Luque and against Gunnar Nelson, we've seen a guy that's a lot more focused, a guy guy who has a game plan going into fights, and a guy that has an ability to make adjustments mid-fight as well. As when you look back at the Gunnar Nelson fight, Kevin Holland was able to land big shots early. He was almost able to find the TKO in the first round over Gunnar. Gunnar was able to survive, but regardless of that, Holland made some adjustments going forward, and he was able to pull out a decision victory. And in his fight against Vicente Luque, he saw an ability to find a submission, and he was able to get one in the second round via an anaconda choke. I think at this point, at least in his last two fights, Holland is looking to utilize more aspects of his game to be more successful in the UFC, and I think that's something that could potentially help him going forward. Holland is not just going to be a guy that looks for that big right hand and an occasional jab and just would get up if he has a top position in the wrestling. He's a guy at this point who's going to look to utilize everything. If the right hand is there, he's going to look to utilize it. If the left hook is there, he's going to look to utilize it. If the submission is there, he's going to look to utilize it. And going into each individual fight, him and his team are coordinating a game plan on potential weaknesses that his opponent may have, and he's going out there and looking to exploit those weaknesses. So I think at this point, although it is a small sample size, and although the level of competition isn't necessarily the highest, I think we're seeing a much more focused Kevin Holland out there. But another question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I think Kevin Holland is going to run through Daniel Rodriguez? Well, in my opinion, I feel this way for a couple different reasons, but the first reason I want to touch upon is the power difference. Because when you talk about D-Rod, yes, he has some skill, he has some interior boxing, but one thing that D-Rod struggles with is going up against guys that have a lot of power. Although D-Rod has only officially lost one time via KO throughout his career, when you look at his second stint with the UFC, he's definitely struggled against guys with power as of late. As when you look at his fight against Ian Machado Gary, although Gary isn't necessarily known to have a ton of power, he was able to land a head kick pretty flush on D-Rod, and he was able to find that TKO victory. But besides that, even D-Rod's fight against Kelvin Gastelum, Gastelum was able to land a bunch of big left hands and a bunch of big shots that was really hurting D-Rod. And I think if Gastelum went for it a little bit more, he probably could have found a TKO finish. So I think due to the fact that Kevin Holland hits so hard and he is so long for the weight class, is going to prove to be a huge problem for D-Rod. And I think if Holland is able to land one of those big right hands, or maybe one of those big left hooks that he is able to utilize, I think we could be talking about a TKO finish for Kevin Holland. But outside of the power from Kevin Holland, I think another factor in this fight is a lack of power from Daniel Rodriguez. As I think going into this fight, we're kind of in one of those scenarios where if Kevin Holland's able to land one big shot, he'll be able to find a TKO or a KO victory, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think Daniel Rodriguez has enough power to finish Kevin Holland. So I think based upon that power difference, it's going to be a huge advantage for Kevin Holland. But the next factor for why I think Kevin Holland is going to dominate and outclass Daniel Rodriguez is due to his versatility. Because I think wherever the fight goes, Kevin Holland is going to have an advantage. If the fight's on the feet, Holland is going to have the power advantage, as we touched upon before. He's also going to be significantly longer. He can fight at range, he can fight in close. He even has a more diverse and more unique skill set on the feet, where he can utilize jabs, he can utilize right straights, he can utilize uppercuts, he can utilize hooks, he can even get in the clinch utilizing knees and elbows. And even if the fight were to go to the ground, Holland could even utilize some of his submission skills and possibly even submit Daniel Rodriguez. Now, I don't think Kevin Holland is going to be actively looking for a takedown, as he usually never does, but at the same time, if Holland is able to drop D-Rod, or if D-Rod even looks for a takedown on Holland and the fight does go to the ground, I think the submission game and the jiu-jitsu game of Kevin Holland could be a real advantage for him as well. So overall, based upon his versatility and overall based upon his physicality, I think Kevin Holland is going to have a lot of advantages in this fight versus D-Rod. And if I had to give my official prediction for this matchup, I would lean with a Kevin Holland second round TKO. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Kevin Holland is now taking his career more seriously and he can become a legitimate contender, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.